What if you had a user manual for your own mind? A way to just go in, debug some of those limiting beliefs, and install new, more powerful software. Well, today we're cracking open the cover on a field that claims to be exactly that, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP. It's controversial for sure, but it's also absolutely fascinating. So let's see if we can really recode our own thinking. Everything we're about to talk about really comes down to this one single idea from the philosopher Alfred Korzybski. The map is not the territory. So what does that even mean? It means that your perception of the world, it isn't the world itself. It's just your own personal internal map that you're using to navigate what's out there. All right, so let's start with this concept of an inner OS. Think of it like the invisible software that's always running in the background of your mind, coloring every single thing you experience. So this inner operating system, this map, it's built piece by piece from everything you see, hear, and feel. From your language, your memories, your unique experiences. And that's exactly why no two maps are ever the same. It's why you and a friend can go through the exact same event and walk away with completely different stories. NLP gets really specific here. It says there are two kinds of reality. First-order reality is just the objective data, the facts. For example, it's raining. Can't argue with that. But then there's second-order reality, which is the meaning we stick onto that fact. Like, the rain is ruining my day. According to NLP, our problems almost never come from the territory itself. They come when we forget we're just looking at our own subjective map. And this leads to a pretty confronting question. One you have to ask yourself. Are you running on outdated software? Because a lot of us, without even realizing it, are operating on these old, limiting beliefs, these little bugs in our mental code that are holding us back from what we're really capable of. And that, right there, is where neuro-linguistic programming steps onto the scene. It's presented as the ultimate upgrade, the way to debug your old programming and install something better. So what is it really? At its heart, NLP is all about modeling human excellence. The idea is to find people who are just exceptional at something, figure out the hidden structure of how they think and act, and then create a model that anyone can learn. It's literally about trying to reprogram your mind for success. The name itself really tells the whole story if you break it down. Neuro, that's your brain, your mind, how you process the world. Linguistic, that's all about the language you use, both out loud and in your own head to make sense of things. And programming, that's about how all that stuff creates your automatic habits and behaviors. So you're using language to change your brain's programming. So where did this all start? Well, you have to go back to the 1970s at UC Santa Cruz. You've got these two guys, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, and they got obsessed with this one question. What makes truly brilliant therapists so brilliant? So they started studying these masters, people like Fritz Perls and Virginia Satir, not just to copy them, but to actually decode the structure of magic behind what they did. Okay, so that's the what and the why. Now let's get to the how. How does NLP actually claim to let you recode your own mind? We're going to look at two of its most well-known techniques for rewriting that mental software. First up is a huge one, reframing. The idea here is actually pretty simple. The experience itself doesn't have a fixed meaning. The meaning comes from the frame you put around it. And if you can change the frame, you change the entire picture. Think about it. Failing a test, that's just a fact. The story you tell yourself about it is the frame. Is the frame, I failed, so I'm a failure? Because that's a dead end, right? It leads to feeling helpless. Or is the frame, okay, that test was a learning experience for next time. The event didn't change, but the meaning did. And that changes everything that happens next. Okay, technique number 2 is called anchoring. And you can really think of this like creating a keyboard shortcut, but for your emotions. It's about creating a trigger that instantly calls up a desired feeling whenever you want. So how is it supposed to work? Well, NLP practitioners say you start by remembering a time you felt incredibly confident. Truly on top of the world. As that feeling hits its absolute peak, you create a unique anchor, like, say, pressing your thumb and index finger together in a specific way. The idea is that you're linking the feeling to the action. So later, before a big meeting, you can just fire that anchor and bring that feeling of confidence right back. Now, all of this sounds pretty powerful, right? Recoding your mind, installing confidence on demand. But this brings us to the most critical part of this whole discussion. The elephant in the room. Does any of it actually work? Well, when you start digging into the actual scientific research, the picture gets complicated. The scientific community has been pretty skeptical, to put it mildly. And when they run rigorous studies on everything from mental health to workplace performance, they consistently find very little, if any, real evidence to back up NLP's big claims. In fact, check out this number, 18%. When researchers did major reviews of all the available studies on NLP, they found that only about 18% of them actually validated its theories. That is not a great track record. So why is there such a huge gap between the hype and the data? Well, critics point to a really shaky foundation. A lot of the core concepts are based on models of the brain from the 1970s, and let's just say neuroscience has learned a thing or two since then. Plus, many of the theories are so vague that they're basically untestable, which is a big red flag for pseudoscience. And with no real governing body, the quality of training is all over the map. And some critics don't pull any punches at all. This quote really sums up how a lot of the scientific community feels. They see it as a pseudoscience that's more about sales tactics and making money than it is about legitimate therapy, sometimes even comparing it to a pyramid scheme. And this all boils down to a really tricky ethical line. Think about it. Is a technique that helps you build rapport a genuine tool for connection, or is it a tool for manipulation? Is reframing a problem a healthy way to find a solution, or just a way to ignore something serious? The line between powerful influence and outright manipulation, it might just come down to your intent. So, where does that leave us? On one hand, you've got these incredibly compelling ideas and a ton of passionate followers. On the other, you have some pretty serious criticism from the scientific world. What's the real takeaway here? Maybe the lasting value of NLP isn't whether every single one of its techniques is scientifically proven. Maybe its real legacy is in the powerful questions it forces us to ask ourselves. At its core is this radical idea that you have way more power over your inner world, your thoughts, your feelings, than you've been led to believe. Because really, whether the specific NLP methods hold up to scrutiny or not, the whole field shines a massive spotlight on the power of your personal narrative. It reminds us that the story you're telling yourself about who you are and what you can do isn't just a story. It's the actual blueprint that's creating your life day by day. And that leaves us with a final and most important question. You can use NLP's tools or you can dismiss them entirely. It doesn't really matter, because the underlying principle is still true. The power to edit, to reframe, and to rewrite your own narrative has always been and will always be in your hands. So the only question is, who's holding the pen?